All right, we are good. So one of the best things about organizing the conference is you can pick the best jobs for yourself. And I decided I was going to introduce Amy. So we didn't have a theme this year. So when we started talking keynotes, we really had 3 criteria. They had to have jobs, we wanted them to be grassroots, and we wanted them to have a connection with access. So my really bright idea was like, oh, I'm going to email Amy. She knows everyone. She can give me suggestions. And then I got like halfway through the compose and I was like, wait, I'm missing something obvious here. And sometimes I'm very, very smart and I make good decisions. And along with the team, we invited Amy to be our keynote. So Amy Buckland recently moved to the University of Chicago, where she is the institutional repository manager. Previously, she was the coordinator of scholarly communications at McGill University Library, where she was responsible for open access initiatives, publishing support, copyright, digital humanities, and research data services. She has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Concordia University, Montreal, where she studied political science and women's studies, and an MLS from McGill University. Prior to joining the library world, she worked in publishing for 14 years, and, surprise, thinks academic library land is ripe for a revolution. Please join me in welcoming Amy.
I'm a bit short. Before I even start the presentation, I missed you guys so much. I'm so happy to be back. I mean, America is great and wonderful, but come on, Canada. Oh. Anyways, I'm really, I'm even getting a little verklempt over this. Anyways, hi. This has nothing to do with the presentation, just I'm really happy to see all of you. I also want to thank a whole whack of people, including yourselves, but especially the organizers. They made this so fun to be a part of and really kept coming at me with different ideas, and I really, really appreciate it. The Access community, you guys are always awesome. This is my favorite conference. I was the one that coined the term, our library technology conference is better than your library technology conference, because I really believe that. I really think this is the best one. And Canadian Library Land, I love you and I miss you. But really, we just want me to get up here and talk about cards, right? She's still here? Come on, after that talk yesterday, I was like, she can have my spot. This will be great. But if you're willing to bear with me a little bit, I thought I'd give you just a little bit of background about how I got here, almost right here on this stage. So I went to library school at McGill. I graduated in 2008. And I went to my first Access in Hamilton, where Krista let me sleep on her sofa because baby Barry and I didn't have any money, and I managed to hop a bus. And there I heard Dale Askey give a Benkley lecture called "We Love Open Source Software, and No, You Can't Have Our Code." And I immediately thought, okay, I made the right call here. I was a new grad. Like I said, it was my first conference, which I just remembered is not actually true. I presented at IFLA with Krista Godfrey about Second Life. That was my first. I can't give a talk without talking about Second Life. It's still in me. So that was my first professional conference for real. So Dale was up there, and I didn't know who he was. He worked at Kansas. Where's Kansas? I don't know where Kansas is. It's fine. But I knew I had found my crew because suddenly here was someone giving a big talk at a conference and actually calling out how we do things and how we build things and questioning them. Not just saying, you do this and this and this, and then everybody's happy. He was actually questioning things, and it seemed to me like there was a great sense of creating dialogue in the room and challenging some concepts. So challenging concepts is a really big thing for me because I grew up in a newsroom. Figuratively, I'm third-generation newspaper man, which is the term. And literally, my first full-time job was in the newsroom of the Montreal Gazette, working 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. full-time as soon as I turned 18. I guess my parents had plans for me. And if you know a news editor, you know that the one thing they love more than anything in the world is dialogue and challenging concepts. Or smoked meat sandwiches from Schwartz's, but really challenging concepts. That's a big thing. So when I decided to move to libraries, I was so happy to find this group of people who was interested in doing similar things. From the Gazette, I went to work for a number of other publishing companies, finally landing at Cambridge University Press. It was my experiences there, and they are typical of all scholarly publishing, but it was my experiences there that made me go to library school. In all honesty, learning about the production and dissemination of scholarly knowledge and all the money involved and all of those things, that really made me decide, okay, I'm going back to school. I hadn't even finished my BA yet. I'm going back to school, and I'm going to become a librarian. So that's how I got here, and I like to joke that all the copyright work I do is in penance for having worked for these two organizations at some point in my career. I worked for Disney for a while, and so that's why I'm so adamant that copyright needs reform quickly, because Mickey Mouse. So some disclaimers, because it's me. I am very aware of my privilege being able to stand up here and talk to you. You in this room, many of you also have a lot of privilege happening, and we have to be aware of that. Not everybody can say these things. I'm very fortunate to have a position where I can say these things. I'm very fortunate to have a job, a life, all of these things. University of Chicago might not love everything I'm about to say, but I'm not going to lose my job over it. They have my visa, so I really hope that I don't lose my job over it. I also have an agenda. I don't believe that libraries are neutral. I never have. I have big plans. We need to change things, and you can't pretend that you're neutral when you're not. So I have an agenda. I might curse, if you know me. Well, if you follow me on Twitter, I curse. I'm going to try not to. I told the organizers I was going to try my best not to curse, and I'm just going to say ducking a lot, because we already talked about ducking in the keynote. And also, I have no answers. So if that's what you were hoping this was going to be about open access, sorry. There was a joke, all the Carl people for the linked data had to leave at the break because of a scheduling issue, and I was really hoping that they would have waited until I said I have no answers and I'll stand up and leave at the same time, but they couldn't coordinate it, so it's unfortunate. And in response to Peter on Twitter, this will probably not be subtle or understated, because that's not my style. And because I really changed my talk as soon as Molly gave hers, the opening keynote, and because the presentation spoke to so many important issues, and because this is the closing keynote where I'm supposed to kind of wrap things up for you guys, and possibly because this is Ontario and I don't really want to get ASCII'd. Sorry, Dale. You guys wrote this presentation. So this presentation is going to riff off of concepts, ideas, everything that I've heard over the past 3 days. I tried to capture an idea or quote from most of the sessions. Some might be verbatim, some might be filtered through Twitter, some might have been yelled as a trivia answer, who knows. And I'm going to try and tie them all into open access issues, because what I heard from you guys all related to open access, access to information in some way. So I'm going to do my best to try and tie it all together, because I really think everybody in this room is involved in open access, whether or not you think you do it on a daily basis. I run even keynote things pretty casually, so if I'm saying something and you really have no idea what I'm saying, please wave your hand or dance or something. Another thing is I growl a lot, and I'm hungry, so my stomach growls a lot too, so we'll see what you guys can pick up over the mic. So let's get started. So what do I mean when I talk about open access? There's the standard description of open access that Peter Suber wrote oh so many years ago, that it's literature that is digital, online, free of charge, and free of most copyright and licensing restrictions. So that makes sense to most of us. When I talk about open access here, though, I mean more than just that. I mean any research product that comes out, any data set, any image, any presentation, anything like that. Not just the literature. I think we kind of lose ourselves by focusing so much on the published manuscript that we forget about what, and we all know what open data can do, that we forget that there's so much more involved. So when I talk about the thing of open access, it means much, much more. So initially, scholarly publishing was meant to do this. It was meant to spark curiosity and encourage creativity in whatever that meant, however that manifested itself over the years. So whether that meant that someone got a great idea to go and do some research, or if someone just really liked what someone had written and decided to remix it and do art based on a poem. It's all tied to the same thing. So initially, this was where we were starting from, curiosity and creativity. It was also meant to build this reciprocal participation. I love this term so much. It was really a give and a take. You weren't writing things in a vacuum. There was someone to read them. You weren't creating music for no one to listen to. So this was all originally where all of this came from. And I think sometimes we have forgotten this when we talk about the scholarly ecosystem. We have really forgotten the initial point of the whole thing. And now we have built these constructs around it just to keep it impossible to change. And so really I'm talking about tenure in this sense. If anyone's gone through the tenure system, I'm sure you're all familiar with someone at some point, a supervisor has said, well, don't bother publishing there because either it's open access or has a low impact factor, or maybe your people read it, but my people don't read it, and my people are going to be the ones reading your dossier. So we've built this tenure construct around scholarship that is actually tying it down, discouraging creativity, discouraging new modes of scholarship, which is really terrifying for me with all the new things that are happening. And we need to actively, whenever I talk about open access, we have to talk about the tenure system. It has very great protections in it for people that I do believe in fundamentally. I think how people are assessed for tenure, we really need to start looking at that and evaluating new ways to do that. Transparency of code and processes, well, in the tenure system, not so transparent at a lot of places, but even in the publishing world. So I do a lot of work with students and postdocs who are publishing their work for the first time. Who's published in a scholarly journal, a traditional scholarly journal here? A few of you. So being librarians, we have this great little insight into the whole cycle in a sense. We help them find the stuff, we help them research the stuff, then they write the stuff, then we buy back the stuff, but whatever, we buy back the stuff. And then, so we understand this whole system. A lot of people don't understand that system. They don't understand signing away copyrights so that your work can be published. A lot of postdocs don't even understand peer review in all of its glory. They don't understand all the different components of that, and I think that that's definitely a role that we can make more transparent for our users, whoever they are. And I'm speaking mostly from an academic point of view, of course, because that's my basis, but citizen scientists are going to public libraries all the time, and they need to know how they can participate in this conversation better. And I really think that's a role for the library. This is one of my favorite. I love this when this came out. Being compliant does not mean that it's suddenly accessible. And I think we're coming up, especially in Canada, there's a lot of ways to be compliant when it comes to open access. In the States too, lots of ways to be compliant. But that doesn't mean we're actually facilitating access in a lot of ways. In the States, there are two groups kind of vying to be the access points for scholarly publishing. There's the SHARE group, which is led by the Association for Research Libraries, and Chorus, which is a publisher-backed group. And basically, Chorus wants to build an index of published work, but not make it openly available. And SHARE wants to make it openly available. But both make you compliant. So one is not improving access whatsoever, and the other one is. So this is something we definitely have to always think about. And I'm just talking access, assuming you can read a web screen normally and click through and have internet at home. I'm not even getting to the point where if you have a visual disability or anything like that, or if you need to find literature in another language, like that's something that we're starting to deal with. English being the lingua franca is not gonna stick around forever, so what are we gonna do then? So there's a lot of issues around accessibility, and I was so thrilled to hear that was a big topic happening here in more ways than just one. And I think it's really important that we continue that. For me, this was one of the biggest points, excuse me, it's a little warm. One of the biggest points is that the scholarly commons is no longer the scholarly commons. It's not a public space anymore. We have created this world in scholarly publishing, locking down a number of things. And I fundamentally believe this is why everybody in library land has to get on board with open access immediately, because we are just complicit in ensuring that this research stays behind a walled garden all the time. And the concept of the scholarly commons no longer really exists in the way that it was meant to exist. If you have to log into anything, if you have to, anytime, we did a lot of research at McGill on students leaving and not realizing they would lose all of their access to the scholarly literature that's out there because it was locked down. These are things that our users don't understand. Public libraries have a really hard time buying any databases because they're so expensive. This is important. If the scholarly commons is a public space, which I fundamentally believe it is, we are perpetuating the privatization of this this public space if we don't start doing more around open access. And this is ultimately what it costs. Who gets to read the access? Who gets to read the articles? Who gets to play with the data? Who gets to learn all of this stuff? We are deciding that because we're basing the structure on an antiquated system, because we're all busy. I totally understand. Someone joked, they're like, oh good, you're gonna get up and give me more work to do. Yeah, probably, that might happen. Because this is really important. This is a fundamental thing for us. So who are we saying belongs in higher education if you have to have an academic affiliation, if you have to live in a borough where your library is well-funded and can give you access to this stuff? We are really cutting back on access to scholarly literature whose very point was for the public. It was to spark curiosity and build creativity, and we're really locking it down. So, because I have you all in a room, and this was just good, we're gonna fix it. We're just gonna fix it. It's one of those things, we're just gonna have to do it. It's not gonna be pleasant. We're gonna make some enemies. I promised I wouldn't call anybody out, but I might later on. Jillian, you knew that was gonna happen, so yeah. So it really is, I really believe it's our responsibility to fix this, library land in general. We have to do it. And we're doing it. You guys are watching and listening to your users, and you're figuring things out. We're all hearing students say, oh, when I graduate, I don't have access to that journal anymore, but I'm gonna be a social worker. I need that journal. Or we're finding people coming into the library saying, they want $12.99 in my credit card number to buy this article. What's going on with that? It's for, I'm doing health research for my daughter. I need access to it. So we're starting to listen, and I think I see it, I see it much more in Canada than I do in the US, but I see it starting, that we're actively engaging with these conversations at a higher level. We're trying to figure out ways to do it higher and do it together, which I think is a great first step. We always talk a mean game about our listeners come first, and I think this is one of those ones where we will see immediate impact if we start doing this. This was from today, and I think it is so perfect. So we classify everything in libraries because we do that. How many of you have alphabetized anything at home? Anything in your house is alphabetized, okay? Anybody got any Dewey or LC happening at home? Nice, all right. So whose partner is kind of like, what the hell, I can't find anything? My partner is. So this is something we like to do. We want to do it, but we really have to be very careful of this because it is not reflecting reality when we do it. If we start classifying our users in certain ways, we are going to miss out on things. When they talk about users for scholarly articles, citizen scientists almost never show up as a user group. It's always faculty, staff, and researchers. That is it. It's rarely even students sometimes, but citizen science is really growing. We've seen great advances in cancer research, all kinds of things from people who do not have an affiliation and who just do this work. So we have to be very careful. Who we think might want access to the scholarly literature, we're wrong. We shouldn't care who wants access. We have to make it so that everyone can just have it. We just can. So things like increasing accessibility of web content, very important. Semantic web, making sure that the link data, that the language people are using to look for things makes sense to them, not just for us. I mean, anybody who was in library school, when they told you that Dewey once classified women as a pastime, and you're like, oh, perfect, this is great. It's the same thing. We have to be very careful that we don't just keep perpetuating these views of reality that are our little box. My notes for this say, good God, please. That's all they say. We're very good at building, I've been in repository land for 6 years, and we're very good at building institutional repositories, and they're built, and they sit there. Instead of us pooling all of our resources and building one repository with different nodes and different heads and making it that way so that we're pooling our resources. The problem with repositories is that we take all this great content and we put it in a place and then we're like, done, tick. But we really need to think broader than that. And that's a lot of the linked data talk I heard was about that. I told Declan I would say Portland Common Data Model, so I said it there. But it's a real thing. It has legs, and not just because Declan says it has legs. It has legs. So that's something that we should all be talking about more. So if you're building these silos, if you're building a digital collection and you have archaic copyright policies on them, don't bother building the digital collection, really. We build our digital collections so that they get used, so that they support research, they spark curiosity, they build creativity, and then we say all rights reserved, even if the item is in the public domain, all rights reserved, you must contact me and tell your grandma to write me a nice letter so that I'll let you use it in a scholarly presentation. So we really need to assess that and make sure that we overcome. The silos can be either tech silos, they can be cultural silos too. We've had this discussion many times. I think language searching coming from Quebec, the fact that a lot of things you have to know certain language to find it, what are we missing out on there? What can we harness? What tools can we harness to really facilitate that search? Bilingual search interfaces are great sometimes. Diacritics are always super fun to work with. But these are all things that are actually building more and more silos in the world that we need to deal with. In libraries, we do understand systems. We're good with systems. We seem to have an idea that we like to put everything in a system whenever possible, whether that's a cultural system, whether it's a tech system, whatever. We like this. And I worry that we focus too much on the technology aspect of this quote and not enough on the information side of this quote. So a while ago, many, many years ago, Amanda Etches and I wrote an editorial in Feliciter, and it was basically subtitled, "It's not about the tools, fools." Like, we kept talking about this new thing and this new thing, and we had forgotten that it was really, we weren't focusing on the users. And so I was really happy today to hear a lot of focus, and at Access, to hear a lot of focus on users and what the users want, and kind of building your system from the user up and not the other way down, and modifying them to make your people, to give your people the access to what they need. How we build tools has to take into account who is using them. And too often, we've built these tools and been like, but a librarian can do it. What you need to do is you go to advanced search, and then you pull up the mesh heading for this. But that's not how our users are finding things. So there's definitely a movement. I'm always happy that the Access crowd is very much behind someone should be able to just log in, click a button, and get what they want. Now, building it is another matter, but I love that that's definitely where we're playing from. We're going to fix it by inserting ourselves into scholarly work in whatever way possible, be that the researcher that comes to the reference desk, be that how we decide to start describing things. Do we start reaching out to other associations and totally saying, you are going to write the taxonomy for this, because you are the experts, you are the people who know this. We're doing a lot better with linking, which is great, but what if we just ceded that power to another group who might know more about that topic? We need to insert ourselves in, and when I mean scholarly, to me, scholarly is pretty much anything that happens that creates knowledge. So that could even mean, joining a club at your university to support the students for something that they need. It could mean, I coached rugby teams. Just doing things like that, you're helping encourage the student's life. That's a really big thing with open access, is we're trying to capture students who will be future researchers. So if we get them engaged in the scholarly world, we get them going and really thrilled with the work that they're doing, and they're very happy with nice metrics and saying, oh, you mean I can just put this on my blog, that type of thing. If we engage with these scholars at the youngest age possible, then the chance of change is that much stronger. And that's really where a lot of our resources could be spent. So even, I would say, there's a number of projects happening with helping undergraduates write a peer-reviewed journal. They write, they edit, they do all of that. And that introduces them to the scholarly publishing system. And when you tell a student that they just signed away all their rights and they can't even post anything on their blog, or they can't put it on Facebook, that's when you really hear, but why do we do that? Why was the system built that way? Why are we continuing to do it? I need to get a drink of water. Excuse me. Is everybody okay so far? Am I talking crazy to anybody? Some people are smiling, some people are, yeah, okay. I just finished writing this morning, so we'll see how long it actually goes. We might be going for beers early. So we've inserted ourselves in our scholarly work, And I think this can also happen at a systems level. This can happen at the, at the cataloging level, everywhere. We need to start really just thinking who our users are, finding out who they are first, and then building our systems around them. I know we all have legacy systems. Some are more legacy than others, and that retrofitting is a royal pain, and building anything from scratch, also a royal pain. So we need to do this together. This is another thing where we need to stop being so siloed and start doing more and more of this work together. We are part of this generative process. I know sometimes in library land we feel like we're not thought of enough in our communities, or people don't see the value of what we do. And that's true in many, many cases, and sometimes it's justified and sometimes it's not justified. But I think open access is one key moment where we can really show our value as part of the scholarly process. And not only our value, but we can take a leading role to actually change how the dissemination of information is happening. We can do this. I know I sound like, well, that's what closing keynotes are for, right? Woo, this is awesome. No, we really can do this. And I know this is why I've been called a zealot, a pollyanna, all those things. I am. It's okay. I'm okay with it. But I really think we can do this. And having seen the publishing side, I know we can do this. We definitely can do this. And once we start dealing with the fact that we genuinely have a strong role to play with this and start taking ownership of that, I think big things are going to happen. This might be my favorite quote that was said. I really think that this is where we need to riff off of this in everything we do all day. So everything we do can help our users. It can help. And our users, we don't have to define our users. Our users are everybody. One thing that's very different being in the States now is private universities. Here I'd talk to public universities, and I'd just be like, well, it's shirk money. We got to make sure it's available. Okay, so in the States, I can't really play off that angle that, well, it's all taxpayer money, we have to do this. But there's other angles, and I really think if we focus on how scholarship can really change the world, how access to that scholarship, how new research has always come from previously published research, if we play on that angle, you'll be hard-pressed to find a scholar that says, no, I don't want that. I don't want people to talk about me. I don't want to be cited. If you use that angle, you can definitely get a lot more traction. And this also means encouraging the citizen scientists of the world. So helping them, which we do very well. All the maker talk, I was just thinking, we've always been a maker space in some sense. Right now we give them the physical tools, but we've always given them the mental tools to make whatever needed to be made. And so if we think of things that way, then making sense of the world is another making event. We're just helping them figure things out. I had to say, community is key. Not a hard sell with you guys, with community. You guys are you're pretty sold on it. How many people here have been involved in organizing a previous access in any way possible? How many people, who's at their first access? Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, that's so great. That's awesome. You guys too? Yeah. Oh man. This is fantastic. That really, it was funny because when people were saying that they saw the access, the future of access on the schedule, they were like, what does that mean? Does that mean no more access? And then I joked, yeah, we're just going to be called Code for Lib North and it'll be fine. Really, they're Access South, right? That's what they are. I keep trying to remind them now that I'm down there waving the flag everywhere. But community is key, and I really think that this community, we have more power around open access than you might think. You might not be a scholarly communication librarian. Your dealings with repositories might be very peripheral. You might feel that in your day-to-day you don't touch anything related to open access, and I'm kind of just here. I just want to tell you that you're wrong, and you do. And I think that one of the things that would start this ball rolling even faster within the community is if we all just started talking about open access as though it was already here. It's already here. We're already doing it. Everything a library has done from the start. At no point did we ever seek to lock anything down, really. That's never. We've had to do it because of vendor negotiations. We've had to do it for other reasons. But our initial thing was never to not make our work available. So I really think that this is something we should just start talking about it as though it's the new normal. Open access is here. If you publish, make your work available. If you give presentations, put them up somewhere so folks can find them, that type of thing. We can really start by walking the talk, obviously. But then I really think it's one of those things, if it's just the new normal, then it kind of takes the edge off of it for everybody. And we know that edge, depending who you're talking to, can be very pointed and kind of stabby. So the more that we just say, oh, it's open access, but don't worry, you've already been doing half of this. You're fine. We'll get there. There's always going to be 20% of the population who, should retire or something. I don't know. It'll happen at some point. I'm mostly talking about some of the faculty professors I have met in my day who say things like, but why would I publish there? I don't care if those people can read it. I only care if my colleagues can read it. And I think that way of thinking about research is dying a very rapid death, and I'm very happy to see that. So when I talk about open access, I mean open access, it's open for all, in whatever that means. And I know that broadens it to almost a terrifying scope, but that's really the level that I think we are okay thinking at. That means however you choose to access your information, it's available. However, whatever language you read, it's available. No matter your affiliation, you can do it. And frankly, we have to start working on a lot of the digital divide issues. What if you don't have online access? What are we going to do for you? Because there's definitely, we like to think, again, I'm a very privileged person. I have 95 gizmos that are attached to the internet at all times. That is not realistic. That is my reality. That is not everyone's reality, and we have to be careful with that. Yesterday it was announced, it made a lot of big news, that Elsevier was going to give access to Wikipedia editors to freely link to Elsevier content for citations in Wikipedia. Oh, so magnanimous of them. First off, it's a link. It's not access to the work. They were always able to link to the work, but this made the news. And then I posted on Twitter, I said, so we can link to paywalled articles. That sounds awful and not at all what we want. And the response back was, yes, we're working on it for the readers, but we were more worried about the editors at this point. So this is something that's going to make the news. You're going to hear about it. It's not as horrible as Rupert Murdoch buying National Geographic or HBO buying Sesame Street, but it's right up there with decreasing the access to information that's out there in the world. And so this will be triumphed as a good thing, and I really want you all to be the people amongst your little group saying, but it's not increasing access at all to the actual scholarship. Because we need to start pushing back on these things. And we can. It's terrifying to do it alone. So again, just like the information silos, if we all start doing it, again, another reason I was a bit bummed all the Carl people left, because they could play a role in this. But that's something that we need to do, pushing back on these things and saying, I know that sounds awesome for, 3 billion euros, I don't know. I'm not gonna quote a number because it's gonna be wrong. A lot of money, Elsevier makes a lot of money, that I really feel that there's ways that we can push back on this. They make money off of libraries, they make money from scholarship produced at our institutions for free, that maybe we start saying, okay, so if it comes through from a link in Wikipedia, they can go straight through. Maybe that's our first step in fixing that access. So then Wikipedia will be all happy with that. But these are things that we need to start pushing back on more and more, because it is up to us, it really is up to us to fix this. And I'm just gonna leave it at that because I haven't sworn yet, and I think that's pretty impressive of me so far. So go out and fix open access for everybody, guys. And I was told to leave a lot of time for questions, so I'm a little scared. Go.
Hi, so I recently started as science librarian, systems librarian, data librarian, and also de facto Skullcoms librarian.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I've already started having conversations with faculty about open access, and it always comes back to the tenure problem. I have to publish in scholarly, paid-for open access journals published by Elsevier, and they charge $2,000 to publish. Is there a way that you have experience in convincing the professors not to say that the publishing is a problem, but to push back against the tenure is the problem?
I had some luck with that at McGill because I went through the tenure process at McGill. If I tried to do that at Chicago, it would be, what do I know about anything? So I really spin it in terms of open access for their purposes is just the business model, and that they're focusing too much on the business model. Usually they have a lot of myths. They think there's no peer review. They think it's a vanity publishing enterprise and all that stuff. So I've been fortunate because I know about traditional publishing to say, you know, sometimes those are pretty vanity. Toll access journals have a vanity aspect to them too. And anytime there's an invited issue, that's to up impact factors. So, you know, all those type of things. I mean, really then I would just appeal to them to say, it's like one of those things. You need to put your air mask on first before you can do anything else, before you can save the person beside you. So if tenure is their thing, they have to do it. There's probably many ways that they can still make their work openly available without paying that fee, either through repository deposit or some other embargo way. So then I try and encourage them that and talk about the access. Don't they want to be read more? Don't they want, you know, the studies are coming out that the citation counts are going up if your work is openly available. So I think that you play on the other things. The tenure aspect, I mean, for me, the tenure has to come. We have to get more junior researchers saying, I'm only going to get tenure publishing, peer reviewing, and editing for open access publications. And that's starting. That's definitely starting. And there's the University of Maine at Bangor, maybe, don't quote me on that, actually put the words open access publication in their tenure literature. So I think that gives an immediate legitimacy, in a sense, that's needed to say they didn't just say a traditional publishing model, they actually included the words open access, which I think sparked a lot in people and said, oh, okay, they see me. And also like scholarly blogs. If your lab has a blog and you're blogging your results, that has scholarly value too. There should be some way to assess that. Unfortunately, the new modes of scholarship that's coming out right now, thanks to digital technologies, are really throwing the academy for a loop, and they're not sure how to assess these things. There have been some projects to try and figure out how to assess them. I don't think anybody's really gotten a good handle on it yet, because how do you assess something that is non-narrative, non-linear, you know, it's web art that then links out to other data sets. So I would counsel you to test the waters, poking fun at tenure, but that might not be the right angle to go. I mean, I'd do it, but you probably shouldn't do it. Really? Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. This was really terrifying. Thank you.